Good evening and welcome. And as Yanten has said, I'm going to be talking about the four thoughts. Uh, they are truly the basis on which we can practice. They're the basis for practice. Thinking about them emphasizes the urgent need for us to practice. The four thoughts remind us of what's really important in life. Otherwise, not knowing what is important, we're going to squander our time, and we've already squandered enough. So it's really important, these four thoughts, and they are frequently used in liturgies, particularly in Nundro. Every time a student does Nundro, they begin their session with the four thoughts. I don't have to tell you all about the multitude of distractions we can engage in. You know them as well as I do, and we've engaged in them. We have the capability to scroll through our lives through all kinds of distractions. And in doing this, in being always distracted in this manner, we diminish our intelligence, and the spiritual aspirations that we have become faintly perceptible, if perceptible at all. So it's good for us to meditate on these four thoughts. They're very simple. There's nothing complicated about them. And for the most part, nothing that you haven't heard before. But there's a power in them, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Closer to the point might be what Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche once said. He said, all of our mundane, worldly activities are based on a misperception, a mistaken belief that the world and the things of this world are permanent and therefore meaningful. Because of this mistaken belief, we act based upon grasping and the need to maintain that mistaken belief. All that we do based on this grasping and this mistaken belief, according to Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, is wrong. But the question is, what can we do to change this trajectory of our lives, this trajectory towards more and more distraction? How do we turn our minds to virtue? And again, helpful in this process are the four thoughts. Before we consider them each one individually, I want to present to you an idea that Tralek Rinpoche has. He has a wonderful book about, let me see, it's called The Practice of Lojong. It's a wonderful book, and I recommend it for folks after some introduction. And it's particularly helpful if you have a spiritual friend that you can go read with you. Anyway, in this book, he starts out by saying that the most important notion above all other notions, it takes precedence over all other notions when we're talking about practice, is the word in Tibetan, mugu. And that is often translated as devotion. But Tralek Rinpoche has a slightly different way of looking at that. He calls it interested humility. So anytime we're listening to Dharma listening to teachers. We are better off if we have interest, obviously, and some humility, curiosity, and humility. You know, and we've seen this. People come to Dharma centers and different places, their heads filled with all sorts of ideas about what Dharma is or what it shouldn't be and so forth. And their minds are relatively closed to what the teacher's saying and really uninterested in what's being said. So Charlie Rinpoche tells us that what takes precedence over everything else when we begin to listen to Dharma is interested humility. It opens our minds up to what's being said. Nagarjuna said in his 400 stanzas, he said, an unprejudiced, intelligent, and interested listener is called a worthy vessel. And that's what we want to be. We want to be filled with the Dharma. And the best way to do that is to be open to what's said. Even if you've heard it before, sometimes you come back to a thought or an idea that you've had years ago. But because of the stage you were at that time, you really didn't understand it. So you return to that spot and really know that for the first time. I can't tell you how many times I have gone over the four thoughts. And the more I am able to keep them fresh, to listen to them all over again with freshness, with humility, with curiosity, the more I'm able to do that, the more I gain from reciting them. So the four thoughts basically are around obviously four thoughts. And the first one is our precious human existence. So we're going to think about that. The next thought is death and impermanence. That's the second thought. The third thought is karma, the results of our actions. And the fourth thought is called the dissatisfactoriness or the dissatisfactory nature of samsara. Now, each one of these thoughts has two parts. The first part is basically a statement for us to look at, to contemplate. And then the second part is actually a resolution based upon that thought. There's a very simple method by which we contemplate these thoughts. First of all, we think about them. We think about them. We try to understand the words as they are being said. Then once we understand them, the next step is, how does that apply to me? Or is that true for me? And how is that true for me? And then once you have come to some conclusion about how it affects you, you allow that thought to strike your heart, to allow it to touch you, to recognize that it is also about you. And then once you've been to the point of being moved, you then form a resolution. And in general, the four thoughts come down to, in terms of resolution, our resolve to practice Dharma. It's said in different ways in each of the four thoughts, but that's what it's all about. I remember when I was in retreat some years ago, I was having some difficulties. My practice was not fresh. It wasn't it wasn't as meaningful as I wanted it to be. So I went to Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche and I said, Rinpoche, uh, I'm just having difficulty with the practices. And he said, oh, and I said to him, what should I do? And he said, oh, go back to the four thoughts, make them really a part of you, allow them to strike your heart. And of course, Rinpoche was right, having gone over those and making them really a part of um, what I was thinking at the time. I came around to be able to practice much better. So that's the simple method by which we can contemplate the four thoughts. The other thing I want to say is we do contemplate them. And I'm making a distinction here between contemplation and meditation. In meditation, we have the object of our attention. It's usually our breath, but not always. It's some virtuous object, and and we keep our attention on that. We keep our awareness on that. However, in contemplation, it's a little different. What we do is we take the thought and actually roll it over in our mind, look at different aspects of it, um, analyze it. So it's different in that respect from meditation. However, you have to say that it's like meditation in that, you know, we're not going to be thinking about the weather or what we're going to have for dinner or anything like that. We keep our attention on the thought. So in that respect, it is like meditation. So let's begin. Yantin, if you will put that first thought up, it would be helpful. So the first thing one meditates on are these precious freedoms and resources. They are difficult to acquire and easily destroyed. And our resolve, having contemplated that thought, is, and now I will make them, or I will make my life meaningful. So, what are those thoughts, or what are those resources and freedoms? The most important resource you and I have is our own body. Our bodies are the basis for enlightenment. Our bodies in that respect are really remarkable. They are really finely tuned instruments for spiritual development. So we need to respect and honor our bodies as the vehicles we can use to gain enlightenment. So often, however, instead of having gratitude for the resources and the freedoms we have, as you know, we get preoccupied with life's minor irritations. We all do that. You know, we lose track of gratitude for our body and for all the resources and the freedoms we have. So, as Tralek Rinpoche says, by appreciating our precious human body, we transform it into a spiritual vehicle of meaning and joy. To say it another way, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche said, you have all the necessary resources gathered together for practice. The fact that you are hearing my voice tells me you have all the precious resources and freedoms necessary for practice. Our lineage masters speak about the 8 freedoms and the 10 resources. I won't go into all of them. I'll give you, because there it is a long list, and our time is somewhat limited. But here's some of the freedoms and resources we have. Again, as we said, we have this body. We live in a human realm, and it's only in the human realm that we can attain enlightenment. So it's a pretty big deal that we live in this human realm, and we live here as a result of past good karma. The second thing we could be grateful for is the fact that we live in a world where the Buddha actually appeared. And the other thing we are grateful for, a resource that we have, is our own intellect. The fact is, because we have intelligence, we can understand the Dharma. So our intelligence is a resource. The other thing that we have to say is, and it's a resource, is that we are not averse to the Dharma. Obviously, the fact that you came here tonight to listen indicates that you have some affinity for the Dharma. That's a good thing. And the other thing is, we have some faith and respect for our spiritual friends. That's an important resource. We respect them. And the other resource we have is our spiritual friends themselves, who teach us the Dharma out of love and generosity. So that's an enormous resource we have available to us. So after we've contemplated that, the thought that we have these freedoms and resources, we then say, how does that touch me? And so we think about that and allow it to touch our heart, to strike our hearts. And then we resolve to make our lives meaningful. And how do we make our lives meaningful? Through the practice of Dharma, the practice of the truth. Next, we contemplate impermanence. And so, Yantian, if you'll put that one up, that would be helpful. The environment and its contents are all impermanent. Life and vitality of beings are like a water bubble. The time of death is unknown. When I die, I will become a corpse. At that time, the Dharma will be a benefit. And so, having contemplated that thought, I resolve to accomplish it, Dharma practice, with diligence. So, again, I'm doing a lot of quotes from Tralek Rinpoche and my own guru, Khenpo Karta Rinpoche. So, in this case, Tralek Rinpoche says, we can't keep postponing spiritual practice. We can't be half-hearted and lack seriousness. So often, we immerse ourselves in trivial pursuits, refusing to consider the impermanent, fragile nature of our lives, end of quote. I, for a time, worked, I volunteered at a prison. And one of the fellows who was on death row, we were talking about practice. Now, this fellow spent about 12 hours a day in solitary confinement. I gave him certain practices, very simple practices to do. And interestingly enough, he said, when I came back and asked him, had he done any of the practices, his statement was, I don't have time. We're like that man in the prison. We could make the time, but we get immersed in trivial pursuits. Tralek Rinpoche further writes, we fail to prioritize our practice, the practice which could transform our afflictive emotions. And again, he said, what we do is energetically pursue deluded seductions that leave us disappointed and deluded. So the point here too is it's just not our own mortality we consider. We should also come to consider, and to the extent possible, realize the impermanence of everything, all things. There is nothing that is permanent. Everything is impermanent. As Khenpo Karthar said, until now, you have taken everything to be permanent. This misapprehension has led to enormous suffering. We are treating things that are impermanent as if they were permanent and satisfying and meaningful. And ultimately, they aren't. Padampa Sanji once said in one of his, you might call it, warnings to his listeners, he said, life is ephemeral. Don't yield to laziness and indifference. As the second thought tells us, it's only the Dharma that's going to be beneficial at the time of our death. When you die, the only thing you're going to take with you is your karma. And they say that will follow you like a shadow. So at that time, you won't have companions or helpers to get you to the other side. I mean, once you die, there's no one's going to be able to help you. Karma is going to take over, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But we treat things that are impermanent as if they are going to be of permanent value. So often we are, just like I said, mired in distraction. So we resolve to practice diligently as best we can, diligently as best we can. And we make that resolution until death. Now let's look at the third thought. So Yanten, if you want to put that up. At the time of death, I will have no freedom. Actions are those things of mine I have done. I must abandon wrongdoing. I will pass my time in continuous virtue. Thinking like that each day, I will scrutinize my being. So the deciding factor is not what you want. Of course, you want to be happy and you want to have a happy life and a happy future life. But the deciding factor is not what you want. The deciding factor is what you've done. The text says, I must abandon wrongdoing. What's that mean? So it means, first of all, we have to admit admit our defects, our wrongdoing, our thoughtless acts, and so forth. We have to admit them. And then we confess them. In Tibetan, the word for confess is similar, I think, well, the same word as splitting open. It's like all these deficiencies or wrongdoing that we have, we just open it up, let it come out. We confess it. And we use the Buddhas as our witness to our confession. And then to abandon wrongdoing means we have to renounce, separate ourselves from that wrongdoing, saying we won't do it again. Again, we do that as best we can. We know habits are hard to break, but nonetheless, in our confession, in our admission of our wrongdoing, we're aware that this may take a long time. And we may, because of habit, go back to those habits. But we make a confession and say to ourselves, and the Buddhas as our witness, that we renounce them, we separate ourselves from them. Then we commit ourselves from this time on to never perform them again. And then the third thought tells us to resolve to scrutinize our being. What's that mean? So we take time out and mindfully look at what we've done this day, what kinds of things we've said, things we've done, things we've thought, and then sort of do an inventory to see, have I allowed negative emotions to overwhelm me? Am I being lazy? Khenpo Rinpoche said, there is only one way, in this way of scrutinizing our being, scrutinizing our minds, scrutinizing our actions, we become our own teacher. The thing that I would also say is that once you have confessed, admitted, and renounced whatever wrongdoing you have done, you need to let it go. Shame, in the sense of an ongoing thought of unworthiness, is not a part of Buddhist practice. We admit, we confess, we then renounce, and then we let it go. We let go of the feelings of shame, unworthiness, or whatever. Shame is it's an emotion that has limited value in our practice. So again, by examining ourselves, I suggest every once in a while, just randomly, when you're doing your work during the day, stop and say, where's my mind been today? where is it going if I continue this way of thinking or acting? Uh, it can be sort of surprising to do that. But again, if you do that, as Kimbakarta Rinpoche says, you'll become your own teacher. Now Yanten, let's go to the fourth and final thought.
A quick note while that's coming up, these charts will be available on our class page probably tomorrow or at least in the next few days.
So the fourth thought is all things of samsara, such as places, companions, and acquisitions, continually torment one with the three sufferings. Therefore, these things are like a feast given by an executioner to a prisoner before being led to the execution ground. A very stark picture here, isn't it? Being led after a nice meal to your execution. And so we resolve the resolve here after contemplating that thought is eradicating attachment. I will accomplish awakening with diligence. All the things of samsara, all the things we talk about listed above, we regard as so important. And we think of them as having ultimate value. But at death, they have no value. They're useless. Why? Because at death, we lose them all. No companion is going to, once you die, accompany you. You can't obviously take your acquisitions and the places you've been familiar with and loved, you leave them. We lose all those things at death. The things we are attached to, things we have cherished, we leave behind. Milarepa once said, and I'm not quoting precisely what he said, but he said, you know, we are going to lose all of our possessions. We're not going to have our companions. We're going to leave the places we love. He said, that being the case, why don't we start right now detaching ourselves from them? At least become less attached to them. At death, we will see we need more than worldly achievements to complete and perfect our lives. Now, don't get me wrong, of course, we have to satisfy our temporary and basic needs. We have to do that. I mean, that's part of our obligation in life. We have to take care of those needs, basic needs, and satisfy them. But doing so does not fulfill our more profound needs, our spiritual needs. And we fail to make that distinction often. If we can't make that distinction, we will endlessly search for satisfactions. and those satisfactions that are intrinsically incapable of producing happiness and fulfillment. This is why we wander endlessly from lifetime to lifetime, and in this life itself, endlessly going from one pursuit to another, thinking that's it. The next job is going to be it. The next partner is going to be it. The next meal is going to be it. Tralek Rinpoche said, we have to meet our temporal needs through temporary measures. And he says, we have to meet our spiritual goals through spiritual measures. We get this all screwed up. We try to use temporary means to fulfill ultimate spiritual goals. It's not going to happen. In a sense, we're sort of like people who are addicted to alcohol or drugs. We have to keep increasing the amount of whatever it is, whatever pleasure it is, to reach the same level of intoxication. If I have $100, I want 1,000. If I have 1,000, I want 1,000,000. If I have 1,000,000, I want 1,000,000,000. We're never satisfied. And the reason we're never satisfied is because ultimately we are searching for spiritual goals, the ultimate happiness, and using temporary measures, temporary things, impermanent things to satisfy that ultimate goal is impossible. Most of the pleasures in samsara begin as the reason for pleasure. Can't deny that. But they quickly become a source of pain. It's futile to try to gain what we really want from things that cannot ever give us what we want. As the text states, every single thing in samsara, everything, causes us suffering. That's a rather bold, radical statement. But it's true. There's three traditional ways of seeing suffering. There's, first of all, the suffering of just suffering. You know, I fall, I hurt my foot, I hurt my ankle or something. That's pain. That's suffering. The things that we like causes us suffering through change. Things change, and that makes us unhappy. So it is a suffering of change. And then there is what is called pervasive suffering. There's an element of suffering in all of samsara. As scriptures say, the end of accumulation is exhaustion. The end of building is destruction. And the end of birth is death. So going back to what the thought states, life is like the instance here we're citing is that someone gives you a meal, beautiful meal, whatever it is that you desire, a wonderful meal. And as they're laying the plate down on your table, they say, go ahead and eat this, and after this, I'm going to kill you. It's like that. It's like that. So to gain happiness, we have to begin to get rid of our grasping and work towards awakening. We would misunderstand these contemplations if we thought they are intended to rid us of the zest for life. They're not intended to make us turn our backs on life and the world. These contemplations are meant to teach us to live a purposeful and meaningful life. There are pleasures in life. There are things that are pleasant, but we don't grasp at them. We don't treat them as if they were of ultimate meaning. As spiritual practitioners, we want to live a life without regret. I was a hospice volunteer for some years and had actually the privilege of being with people at the time of their death. And you often saw the tragedy of folks coming to death with so many regrets. And so you and I, we still have time. I don't care how old you are, you still have time to develop a meaningful life, a spiritual life. I one time was I was with Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. At the time when I went into retreat, I was fairly old. And I said to him, Rinpoche, is it ever too late? And I was talking about retreat, but it's about spiritual practice in general. And his response was, it's never too late. It's never too late to begin. So don't think that because maybe you're of advanced stage that you can't begin. You can. And frankly, you should. We want to be able, at the end of our lives, be able to say, I have no regrets. And to do that, we have to know the difference between what is important and what is unimportant. And the four thoughts help us in that direction to understand what is important and what is not important. Finally, Triyana Rinpoche once said, a regretted life has waste written all over it. A life fully lived carries all the marks of success. So let's just take a moment to think about, contemplate what we've just talked about. Let's just take a moment to do that. roll these thoughts over your mind. Determine whether they are true, and particularly, are they true for you? How are they true for you? Let the truth of those thoughts strike your heart. These thoughts are really for me. They are meant for me. They're meant for everyone who follows a spiritual path, but they are meant for me tonight. And so resolve that if I have a practice, I will make it fresh. I will put my heart into it. I will be diligent in my practice. And if I have no practice, I will find spiritual practices that help me to grow spiritually. I will do that. I resolve to do that. And finally, let's resolve that at the time of death, we will have no regrets. No regrets. Thank you so much for your attention. I really appreciated that. Um, and it was an honor to talk to you tonight. They did tell me to be brief. It was said that I would give a brief talk, and I think, held myself to that in that I have kept it under an hour. And so, if we would like to, we can ask questions. And Yanten, you want to describe how we'll do that?
那永腾介绍一下我们问答的方式。
Yes, well, what we'll do is if you have any questions, please put them in the chat and we will read them. And once we've done that, if there's follow-up, you might be invited to actually open discussion verbally, but we'll use the chat to keep everything and make sure everybody gets their fair turn.
大家就是有问题的话，可以放在这个聊天栏里面，然后对话栏里，然后我们来一个一个的问。
And we had one question early on from Bill Brown, and that was, are the four thoughts known by any other names?
Bill Brown 他问的说，四思维有别的名称吗？
The four thoughts that lead to the Dharma.
四思维
I do not know of any other. Yanten, have you heard any other ways of
转心四思维有其他的吗？没有听说其他说法。
four thoughts that turn the mind to the Dharma, but they're all very, very
有转心向
similar.
法式思维，就大概是这个意思。
So I see another question from Tom. It says, oh, went off there. Jan 10.
Now, the next Tom's question is: Are the four thoughts a contemplation of the same thought?
他问的是说，四思维是不是对于同一个思维的思维？
I think I see what you mean. In a sense, they are different facets of the same thing. Basically, it is the idea that we are trying to gain ultimate happiness out of impermanent things. That is our mistake. So in that respect, you could say they are different aspects of the same problem we have. The problem of our misapprehension of appearances. We take appearances to be solid, substantial, and real. I don't know if that answers your question or not. But they are very distinct in terms of their different aspects.
那我可能大致了解你想问的是什么意思。那这个四思维呢，它是对同样一个问题，你可以说它是针对同样一个问题，它的不同的层面。我们最根本的问题呢，就是说根本的错误呢，就是我们想要从这个无常的事物中获得喜乐。那这个思维呢，实际上都是对于这个同样这一个根本错误这个问题呢，它的不同的层面来说的。但是呢，你要是说但是这个不层面呢，他们就是四个思维实际上是有很明确的这个区别的，这个层面是不同的。
Tom responded, "Yes, that's it. Thank you." And we have another question from Jared saying, "This precious human birth is the only form of attainment to this precious human birth is the only form to attain enlightenment. What about in the God realm?"
他这个问题就是说，难道我们珍贵的人生是唯一能够获得这个解脱的吗？那天人呢？
Yeah, thank you, Tom, for that question. And it's a good question. The answer there is because the gods experience so much pleasure, so much physical and so forth pleasure, they don't think about or worry about Dharma. They think this is it, I'm happy here. And so they don't consider Dharma. And what they say is that as their long life in the God realm starts coming to an end, they see that end coming because they still are in samsara, the vicious cycle of samsara. So they see the end coming and they know that the end is, they're likely to fall into a lower realm. So they're very, very unhappy towards the end of their, when their karma has been expended in the God realm. So, so that's their. So wow, it looks like I would like to be in the God realm. I'd like to have all this, lots of stuff, and all kinds of pleasures. It's really not where this realm is. While it has all of its suffering, it is nonetheless the best place to be in terms of the six realms to achieve enlightenment. But that's a good question. Thank you.
这个问题问得非常好，谢谢你。然后这个主要关于这个天人呢，他们呢是非常的就是享受，因为他们的这个娱乐在享乐特别的，包括他们的身体享乐、精神享乐特别的大，所以呢，他们根本就不思维佛法的，他们就觉得这就可以了呀，我很快乐呀，所以呢，有一种说法呢，就是说当天人他的寿命非常的长寿，他的寿命将近的时候呢， 他就会看到自己将来呢会要下堕了，因为他们还在这个轮回中呢，他还是会下堕的，所以他就那个时候呢，他看到自己要下堕的时候呢，是非常非常痛苦的，他看到这个轮回的凶险。但是他们这个在做天人这个业力耗尽的时候的痛苦呢，是这个六道里最痛苦的，所以呢，说起来呢，天人是这个六道中最快乐的，就是有各种各样无穷无尽的享乐和长寿命，但是呢，实际上呢，他同样具足这个轮回中这个变异的苦，所以呢，他们并不是获得解脱的最好的这个一道。
Rob asked, is there a difference between merit and karma?
哎，
It's
这
an
个问
interesting.
题，sorry，那这个
No, go
问题
ahead.
是说呢，就是这个福德和业力有什么区别吗？
That's another interesting question. I'll tell you a quick story. When I went my first time to KTD, I was there was a talk given by Khenpo Karja Rinpoche, and I was a little nervous getting up and asking a question. I thought, my question would be, dismissed. And my question, by the way, was, what is merit? And Khenpo Karta Rinpoche took more than 45 minutes to give the answer to that question. What is merit? I obviously do not have the ability to articulate as well as Khenpo Karta Rinpoche, but I'll give you a simple definition of what he said. And he said, merit is not like money. It's not like you get, you do certain things, you get certain merit. It's not like money in the bank that we cash in at death. It's not like that. Merit is more like doing things that will bring us closer to enlightenment, make us more open to the truth, make us proper vessels for the Dharma. So that's how we could see merit. It's those things, those virtuous dharmic activities we do that leads us to an openness to the Dharma. Karma, and this is Tom Broadwater speaking, this is not a lineage master, but karma to me includes not only the good deeds we have done, but the unskillful deeds we have done. They are both there. And that's what we carry into the next life. Those virtuous deeds we have done and those unvirtuous deeds. And I think merit in this case specifically deals with those activities, those practices, those things we do to make us more open, help us to become more open to the Dharma. That would be the answer I would give.
那这也是一个非常好的问题。我记得呢，我第一次到 KDT 的时候，当时开莫开的仁波切在讲课，那么在问答课的时候呢，我就非常紧张，我就上去呢问了一个问题，但是我那时候很紧张呢，就认为我这个问题不重要，肯定是会被忽略的。那我当时问的问题呢，就是说什么是这个福德功德？就没想到呢，开莫开的仁波切他花了45分钟来讲这个题目。 那我当然我没有这个能够完全的就是复述他讲的内容的这个能力啊，现在，但是我给大家一个简单的一个总结。当时仁波切说的呢，就说这个呃福德呢，它不像是钱，不像是钱财啊，就是好像我们做了某种事情得到的一种回报，就是我们可以变现的一种东西。那福德呢，更像是呢，我们做了我们的所作所为呢，能够让我们呢，更接近觉醒。能够呢让我们的心呢对于真理呢更加的开放，能够让我们成为更合适的良好的一个法器，所以呢这个我们所做的这些善的法行呢，就是能够让我们对法呢保持就是开放的这个心态，这样的一个善法行呢，成为这个是这里成为是福德的。所以下面关于业力呢，这是我自己的讲的了。就说业力呢，我认为呢，它是不光是包括善行，它也包括恶行的，就是不好的行，不是善和不善，它都包括在内的，就是包括我们不善巧的一些行持，是我们会带到下一世的东西。但是我们这里特别讲到的福德呢，并不只是一般的善行，它讲的就是说我们所做的行持呢，能够让我们向法开放。这个可能就是我现在能回答的。Yes, Lama.
So my answer, I don't think is wrong. I'm not steering you in the wrong direction, but it's obviously incomplete. Kempo Karta Rinpoche took almost an hour to answer that question. What you might do, I think it was Bill that asked this question. What you might do is when all the lamas get together for a question and answer session, bring that question up again because you will get more complete answers.
那就是我现在回答的虽然就是不错的，这个应该是不会给你带到错的方向的，但是因为仁波切他是花了1个小时来回答这个问题的，所以我回答的不一定全面。我建议你呢，就是下一次就是这个问答课上所有的喇嘛们都在这里的时候，你再问一下这个问题，你可能就会得到一个更全面的回答。
Yes, in that group will be Kempos and lamas much more educated than I am. I'm actually probably the poorest of Kempo Karta Rinpoche's lamas. But so anyway, go ahead and if you will, ask that question in that group.
这个问答课上的喇嘛们，他们都是堪布，都是更加资历深的这个堪布卡达仁波切的弟子们。那我可能是堪布卡达仁波切弟子中最愚笨的、最下劣的一个弟子了。所以，请你可以那个时候再问一下。
Yeah, my answer is correct, but it's incomplete.
我想我的回答是正确的，但是它不一定是全面的。
That question and answer session will be on November 27.
那这个问答课呢是11月7号。
Thank you, Yongtian, for that information. What was the date again?
November 27.
Okay.
11月7号。
Very good. Thank you. Other questions?
还有其他问题吗？
Yes, we have one from Will. How do we refrain from attachment to companionship while still having deep relationships with those that are close to us?
还是说，我们对那些我们现在依然有着非常亲密关系的这些伴侣、友伴，怎么样能减除这个贪执？
Yes. Well, there is a difference between what we have to be careful about in any relationship
我们对任何一个关系要小心的是
is grasping. When love is about the other person, grasping is about me. So if certainly if we take the bodhisattva vow, we're dedicating ourselves to the benefit of other beings, to all beings. But I would say, just from a practical standpoint, the vow most affects us where the rubber meets the road, which is with the people closest to us. So I don't think there's a contradiction here. I think what we want to do, from a spiritual standpoint, is always to put others before ourselves. Now that's, in degrees, and we're working on that, but that's what we're trying to do. And when we're talking about attachment, we're talking about grasping, wanting to hold on to a relationship in a way that it can't be. Again, I go back to what I was saying earlier in my talk, which is we try to make the things that are impermanent satisfy ultimate needs, or excuse me, ultimate goals. It won't happen. Certainly, relationships can and do inspire us, motivate us, help us along the way. There's no contradiction there either. But it's that element of grasping. And anytime it's about me, it's going to be about grasping. I don't know if that answers your question or not, but I think the difference here is the difference between difference in motivation. That's how I'll put it. If it's grasping, it's all about me. If this relationship is about my satisfying my needs exclusively, and I'm grasping at satisfying those needs, then it's probably not really a helpful or healthy relationship.
那这个关键我们这里所说的是一个执着，抓执呢，它这个是完全是你这个人的问题，个人方面层面的东西，而爱呢是对于另一个人的，所以这两个是有区别的，一个是执着，执着是对你自己的，爱是对另一个人的。当我们在领受这个菩萨戒的时候呢，我们就是说我们要去利益所有的众生。那么这个戒律，这条戒律对我们来说呢，对我而言呢，我觉得它更实用的、更实在的呢，影响到我们的部分呢，就是对于我们亲近的人，就像这个你真正实上路上这个轮胎压到路面一样啊，你真正的实实在在的这条戒律对我们所用的方面呢，就是我们身边的人。所以从修持的角度来讲呢，我们始终是要试图呢去把别人放在我们之前，就是总是把他人置于自己的利益之前的。但是在这个一段关系中呢，加入这个贪执的这个因素的时候呢，如果我们总是去抓执，想要去掌控这个关系的时候，那就像我们先前所说的、所讲的，就是我们想要从这些无常的这些关系，它是本身是无常的，我们想要从这个无常的事物当中呢，去满足我们最究竟的目的，这是不可能的事情。所以当然呢，一段好的关系它是会给我们激励的，会在我们的道路上去帮助我们，给予我们帮助。那么这个是跟你这个保持这个亲密关系是不矛盾的，就是你保持这些良好的关系，跟你的这个戒律是不矛盾的。它的关键就在于我们的动机。我想说的就是最根本的区别呢，在于动机。你一旦加入这个执着的因素呢，那就是完全围绕着你自己了。就是你要满足你自己的欲望，满足你自己的这些欲求、需求。那么这样的一个关系呢，实际上是不健康的一种关系。所以就是只能回答到这里。Yes, Lama.
That's such a great question. And again, I go back, whether it's attachment or not depends upon whether it's selfless or selfish. When we take the Bodhisattva vow, as I said before, we vow that we will benefit, all of our actions are intended for the benefit of other beings. But as I said again, where that is, we can say in a general sense, I love all beings, I will benefit all beings and that sort of thing. We can say that. But again, that vow takes on particular immediacy with the people that are around us, that we, have occasion to be connected to. Those are the people we really are in relationship with. And So it's like that. And so our goal, our ideal is to be selfless. And, I don't want to be too harsh here. We all recognize that we are imperfect, and we're working on this element of being selfless. And it's a we are all works in process. So while we say that we want to work towards breaking this habit of attachment and grasping, that's a process. It's a process over time that we work with in practice. And there are all kinds of really beautiful practices we can do to bring out this love and compassion we have. I'm thinking very simply of Chinrezi. That's a wonderful practice to do to express our own love and compassion for all beings. But again, we are most likely to exercise this bodhisattva vow with those closest around us.
这个是一个非常好的问题，就是关键是我们这个有没有贪执呢？它是决定呢是我们是不是自私的和是不是无我的，这两个方面就是有没有贪执。当我们接受领受的这个菩萨戒的时候，我们就说呢，我们一切的身语意行持呢都是要利益所有的众生的。我们可以这样说：我热爱所有的众生，就是我要为了所有的众生的利益而努力。但是呢，实际上这个戒律呢，落到实地的时候呢，真正的是就是特别的是与我们这个身边的人，直接有关的、有关系的。那么这些是与我有缘的、与我有关系的这些人，而我们所做的修持的目的呢，就是要达成无我。我就是不想说的太严苛吧，但是实际上呢，我们大部分的人呢都是不圆满的，就是我们还在这个过程之中，我们还在往这个方向努力的过程中，它是需要时间的，花时间的去打破我们这个我执的一个习气，它是需要时间、需要修行的。但是我们有很多就是非常善妙的这些修持方法，让我们这个内心中的这个慈悲呢，它能够展现出来。比如说，我能想到的就是，观音菩萨的修持，那它就是一个非常善妙的一个修持呢，能够让我们呢，对于所有众生的这个慈悲心呢，能够得到表达，能够得到开展。但是最重要的呢，这就是最主要的呢，还是呢，我们真正能实行的，把它实行在实行的地方呢，就是我们身边的人。Yes, Lama.
The other thing I would say, this is the work, a life's work. And what I can say to you is that you have, an infinite number of people rooting for you to gain awakening, to become enlightened. You've got the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, you've got spiritual friends, you've got lamas, you've got teachers, all of them, if they are true teachers, want nothing more than you to wake up and become what you truly are, that you express your Buddha nature. There's nothing, I speak of my own teacher, Khenpo Karta Rinpoche. He wanted nothing more than his students to grow. And any teacher who wants to be a good teacher has that same aspiration. Of course, we can't have it with the same degree that a great master like Khenpo Karta Rinpoche has. But I want to say that there are thousands and thousands of enlightened beings that want nothing more than your being able to gain enlightened, to be awakened. we're all, they're all rooting for you.
Lama, they're all rooting for you.
Yes, rooting.
Rooting means
That means like
helping, assisting.
cheering you on.
Oh, cheering on. Okay, thank you.
Yes.
那这个过程呢，实际上呢是终身需要努力的一个我们需要做的一件事业啊。我可以就说呢，就是你告诉大家呢，其实我们有呃无量的这个助道的助友呢，是在那个为我们这个加油打气的。我们有这个诸佛菩萨，我们有善知识，有喇嘛，有上师。有各种种的这个老师，精神的老师，他们所有这些老师，如果他们是真实具德的上师，这个善知识的话呢，他们所想要从我们这里得到的呢，就是就除了让你解脱之外呢，是没有任何其他的这个他们能够令他们欢喜的。所以呢，他们真正的期待的呢，你所做的就是能够真正的成为你真实本来的这个样貌，也就是开演你的佛性。就是拿我的上师堪布喀达仁波切来说吧，对他来讲，他所要的除了弟子的成长以外，他就是没有任何他自己想要的比这个弟子成长能更好的事情了。当然还有很多其他的这个优秀的上师。就是很多的上师呢，都是有这样同样的愿心的。虽然我们呢，就是不能像堪布喀达仁波切这样贤善的善知识呢，就是非常稀有的。但是呢，就是其实有成千上万这些觉悟的这个友情吧，我们叫做觉悟的这些觉者呢，有这些无数的觉者呢，他们实际上是在为我们打气加油的，一直在等待、期待着我们获得觉醒的。
So I think we're getting close to the end of our time here. Is there any more questions, Yantin?
还有问题吗？
No, there are no more questions
Okay.
in the chat.
So I really want to thank you all for your kind attention. And I really appreciate the fact you've asked questions. As I said in my talk, it's really important that you become curious about the Dharma and that at the same time show humility by asking questions. I don't know this, so let me ask a question. So I really thank you in your asking the questions for your interested humility. So thank you. So now maybe we can say a dedicate the long life for the karma.
我特别感谢大家花时间来听，然后呢非常感谢呢更加感谢的呢是你们问了问题，就像我一开始说的，就是我们要保持对佛法的这个好奇心，以及保持这个谦卑心，保持兴趣和谦卑，所以你们问问题呢就显示了你们的兴趣，也显示了你们的谦卑，就是我不知道这个事情我不知道，所以我来发问，所以特别感谢大家。现在呢，我们就把功德做一个回向。首先念一个法王的长寿祈请文。
So I don't know if it's appropriate for me to say this, but I had fun tonight, so thank you all. So let's do the long life prayer for the 17th Karmapa, and I will say it in English.
那我会用英文说一下，念一下。
Karmapa, embodiment of the compassion of all the Buddhas. Karmapa, union of the activity of all the Buddhas. Karmapa, empowered as regent of all the Buddhas. Orjan, Drudro, Trinley, may your life be long. And before we leave, a Buddhist practice is at the end to dedicate the merit of our current activity for the benefit of all beings. It's an act of generosity. It's saying that whatever good I have gained as a result of being a part of this, that I don't keep it for myself. I give it to the benefit of others, to all beings. So, and I'll improvise here if you don't mind. By this merit of listening to Dharma, to asking questions, of being humbly interested in what we are engaged in, may it lead us to full enlightenment. And may our activity also lead to the enlightenment of all beings. And by our activity tonight, may we be a little less ignorant, understanding that the things that we think are permanent and real and substantial are not. And realizing that, may we understand that grasping in that manner results in our unhappiness from lifetime to lifetime. So from the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from this ocean of samsara, this ocean of suffering, may we free all beings. May we free all beings. May we free all beings. Thank you so much.
那在这个佛法修持的结尾圆满的时候，我们通常要做一个回向。回向呢，就是要把自己的功德布施。无论我们是听法、闻法，还是作为这个整个教学的一部分，然后呢，我们都要不要把它私藏，然后把它回向给所有的众生。那我现在就临时的，就是现场说一段回向。就以这个我们今天听闻佛法以及提问，以这个谦卑和兴趣对法的兴趣呢，来提问的所有的这些功德呢，回向给就是我们能够获得最圆满的究竟的觉醒证悟，然后以我们的这个行持呢，也同样回向给所有的有情众生呢，令所有有情众生能够得到正等正觉的觉悟。同时呢，愿我们能够驱除全然的驱逐无明，能够了知呢这个万法是无常，不真实是无实的这个本性，然后呢就根除我们自己的执着，了知呢这个正是我们的执着呢导致了我们生生世世的痛苦。愿我们呢从这个生老病死汹涌的轮回苦海中呢，令所有的众生得到解脱。愿我们令所有的众生得到解脱。
Again, thank you so much. Have a great week, and may you have no regrets. Good night.
感谢大家，愿大家过一个好的一周，然后呢，心无怨无悔。